All right, so now we're going to have a look at a reflective essay sort of structure. What we're going to do basically is I'm going to tell you sort of what to put in each section of your reflective essay. So the way that your reflective essay is structured, or the way that it looks, is very similar to your critical essay. The only difference is in each of the sections, and this is if you remember in your persuasive essay, if any of you have watched that lesson, each of the sections have a certain purpose, or they have certain features that are different from when you're writing a critical essay, a normal critical essay. Okay, so here is your structure for reflective essay writing. Okay, so the first thing is your introduction. Now, your introduction needs to do sort of three basic things, okay? The first thing is it needs to hook the reader. So it needs to contain um, either a sort of statement, or it needs to contain a moment, a description of something that really hooks the reader and makes them want to read more. So the way that you could do this would be to mention something from the story that is really like intense or is really interesting, and don't tell all of it, just mention it, and so the reader will want to sort of know more. So what you need basically in the intro is you need some sort of hook, okay? Also, what the introduction needs to do is it needs to have some kind of setup for the story. So it needs to give the reader a basic idea that is going to be this is going to be an essay which reflects about my first day at school or whatever. So basically, just a basic picture of what the essay is actually going to be talking about, i.e., what the story, what the event is, and then also what the angle of reflection is going to be. So basically, is this going to be sort of a happy reflection? Is it going to be more of uh, I used to be so naive and now I've sort of matured more? Just basically, what is the main type of reflection, or what is the main like types of meanings that you have in your notes. So just read your notes, look at the lessons and the points you make in there, and then just think about maybe what's the emotion, i.e., is it happy, is it sad, is it angry, is it more mature? And then think about what is the sort of main meaning, what is the main, like the main kind of lesson or lessons, what are the type of lessons, and sort of hint at them or mention them in the introduction as well. I don't mean lay them out. I just mean basically, so I'll give you an example of an introduction. Uh, Let me see. Intro. Um, the car crashed. I couldn't believe it. Full stop. There is my hook. Okay. And I'll stop right there and I'll say, when I was 5, I experienced a moment. I'm making all this up, by the way. I experienced a moment that would change my life forever. Okay, so now we have car crash, moment changed my life forever. So I've got a hook, I've got a setup that this is a story, this is an essay reflecting on a car crash that changed my life forever. Looking back on it now, I realized I realized how little I actually knew, and how much more mature, how much more danger there is in the world now, something like that. Okay, so right there, what I've done is I've set the story up, I've got a hook, and also I've put the angle of reflection, which is going to be talking about how when you were a kid, you were kind of naive, you thought the world was a safe kind of place. Now that you're older, you realize it's more dangerous, something like that, yeah? Okay, now the thing to note in all of your writing, so in all of your reflective essay writing, so for the whole of the reflective essay, you're not writing it like a critical essay. Okay, you're writing it more like a story. It's more a story than an essay. So you don't want to write it like this essay will talk about, or, you know, formal things like that with the quote and everything like that. You want to write it like a story that has, you want to write it like a story, and then in between the story, you give your reflections. That's how you want to sort of write it. Okay, so that's the introduction. Now, paragraph 1, 2, and 3, i.e., the main body paragraphs. So you have your intro, then you have 3 paragraphs. So these 3 paragraphs should represent beginning, middle, and end. Now you can change this around if you want to, but this is sort of the simplest way to do it. Just make each of the paragraphs, 1 is beginning, 2 is middle, 3 is the end. Make each of the paragraphs about that certain part of the story. So again, in your notes and your plan, you should already have your story broken up and split up into beginning, middle, and end. So now all you want to do is make your first paragraph about the beginning, second about the middle, third about the end. And you want to answer these questions. And remember, you've already done this in your planning, which is why I told you to do it. You want to make sure each paragraph has an answer to these questions. So it has story in it, and also it has sort of detailed, deep reflection in it as well. Okay. Now, finally, the last thing is going to be your conclusion. Okay. Now, a really clever way to do your conclusion is to sort of say something that you said in the introduction. Like I could say again here in the conclusion, the car crashed, the night changed forever, something, whatever I mentioned before. I could say it again. So you want to tie back to what you said before, tie back to the beginning. Then summarize your main reflection. So again, just summarize what the main thing you've learned. Now that I'm older, I realize the world is dangerous, blah, 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 whatever it is that you said before. And now finish the essay off by again saying, finally, how you are better now, how you're different now, how you're more grown from the experience. So finish off the essay saying, overall, how are you changed now? How are you different from the way you used to be? Or how did the thing impact you? Just as like a final kind of statement. And again, in a similar way to what I said about the persuasive essay, when it comes to the conclusion, you don't want to introduce any new information. So don't mention anything new in here. You want to just basically restate, summarize, say again in another way, things that you've already said. Okay, just the information you've already put in. You want to mention it again in a sort of summarized way, or using like imagery or using certain word choice, but you don't want to mention any new part of the story or and this happened. You don't want to open up anything, because the conclusion again is an ending. The conclusion is you shutting the door, it's closing the book, it's the story is over. Okay, so that is the structure of a reflective essay. Introduction hooks the reader, sets the story up and the angle of reflection. And then you have the story and the reflection in the main body paragraphs. And then in the conclusion, it's a sort of summary, tying back to the beginning, and then summarizing your main reflections. And then again, just sort of stating how you're different now that you've been through the experience. Okay, good job.